The court intervened and made it clear that the Geneva Conventions did apply to detainees at Guantanamo and that they did have the right to habeas corpus, a right that Congress has twice unsuccessfully attempted to take away. This fight to restore the rule of law took time, years in fact, in which the detainees of Guantanamo continued to suffer indignity and inhumanity. It was not until July 2006 when the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Gordon England, issued a memorandum stating that Common Article 3 of the Geneva Convention applies as a matter of law to the treatment of detainees held by the Department of Defense, and that the humane treatment is the overarching requirement of Common Article 3. So we were back to where we started. Unfortunately, by then, the damage had already been done, both to the detainees and to the reputation of the United States as a law-abiding country. America is a nation founded on a reverence for the rule of law. We should never forget that when we take an oath to enlist or be commissioned as an officer in the United States Armed Forces, we do not swear to defend the United States. We swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The oath of office for the President contains similar words. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Tragically, under the undeniably heavy pressure to defend Americans from terrorist attack, some of our military and civilian leaders lost sight of their obligation to defend the Constitution as well. Under the Constitution, all men are created equal, and all are entitled to be treated with dignity. No one is undeserving of humane treatment. It is an unmistakable lesson of history that when one group of people starts to see another group of people as other, or as different, as undeserving, as inferior, ill treatment inevitably follows. In the global war on terror, generally, and in the detention camps of Guantanamo especially, the detainees were seen as terrorists, as the worst of the worst, something less than human, and were treated accordingly. After 6.5 years, we now know the truth about the detainees at Guantanamo. Some of them are terrorists. Some of them are foot soldiers, and some of them were just innocent people caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the detainees at Guantanamo have one thing in common with each other and with us. They are all human beings, and they are all worthy of humane treatment. We should also never forget that no one in Guantanamo at this time has been convicted of a single crime, and that even in these deeply flawed military commissions, they are entitled to a presumption of innocence. Throughout the global war on terror, we have heard repeatedly from our military and civilian leaders that this was a new kind of war, a war that requires new methods, new ideas, thinking outside the box. So that is what the highly creative and motivated people at Guantanamo did. They abandoned the tried and true and lawful methods of Army Field Manual 34-52 and wrote a new playbook. A playbook that included intimidation with dogs, sexual humiliation, and sleep deprivation. These and other methods were employed at Guantanamo and, as the Schlesinger report put it, migrated to Abu Ghraib, where they resulted in the shocking conduct portrayed in the infamous photographs. The Secretary of Defense said, "Take the gloves off," and the soldiers and sailors of Guantanamo saluted smartly and said, "Yes, sir." In fact, many of the illegal and abusive enhanced interrogation techniques were personally approved for use by the Secretary of Defense. Other techniques, like the frequent flyer program, were simply invented on the fly. The public revelation of the events at Abu Ghraib on 60 Minutes 2 in late April 2004 caused the Department of Defense to go into full damage control mode. As part of the damage assessment, Secretary Rumsfeld dispatched the Navy Inspector General, Vice Admiral Church, to Guantanamo to evaluate the treatment of detainees there. He visited Guantanamo from May 5th to May 7, 2004, and reported back to the Secretary and to the press that there was virtually no detainee abuse at Guantanamo and that everything was in order. General Hood was running a tight ship. Detainees received great treatment. Incredibly, the very day that Admiral Church was investigating conditions at Guantanamo and finding the treatment of detainees to be so wonderful, detention officials at Guantanamo ordered the initiation of the frequent flyer program on Mohammed Jawad. Before the wheels of Admiral Church's plane were even off the Guantanamo runway, Mohammed Jawad's arms and legs were being shackled in preparation for the first of 112 moves up and down the hall of L Block every 3 hours for the next 14 days. While Mr. Jawad was being shackled for the first of these moves, back on Capitol Hill, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld was testifying before the Senate and House Armed Services Committees, reassuring the nation that the abuse at Abu Ghraib was isolated to a few rogue guards. When Secretary Rumsfeld testified before the HASC on May 7, 2004, the day the torture of Mohammed Jawad commenced, he told Congress, in reference to those detainees who had been abused at Abu Ghraib, "I am seeking a way to provide appropriate compensation to those detainees who suffered such grievous and brutal abuse and cruelty at the hands of a few members of the U.S. military. It is the right thing to do." Today, the government takes a decidedly different tack. They deny the suffering of Mr. Jawad, accusing him of being weak. And they are attempting to reward him by pressing forward with the first war crimes trial against a child soldier in the history of the civilized world. Major General Hood, the JTF Guantanamo commander who took command in March 2004, states that he ordered the frequent flyer program stopped in late March 2004. He says he did not authorize and would not have authorized the program to be administered to Mohammed Jawad. General James T. Hill, the Southcom commander, the person to whom Major General Hood reported directly, states that he did not authorize the frequent flyer program, did not know about it, and that it was contrary to his orders, which required prior approval for sleep deprivation and limited it to 4 days. The Joint Detention Group commander, Major General Cannon, disavows any knowledge of Mr. Jawad's treatment. In fact, Major General Cannon seems to have developed a very convenient case of amnesia. The Joint Intelligence Group director, Esteban Rodriguez, doesn't know about Jawad's treatment specifically, but states that there was a second unauthorized frequent flyer program carried out by the Joint Detention Group as a form of disciplinary measure. He said, as did Major General Hood, that there was no special effort to collect intelligence from Mr. Jawad, that he was not believed to possess any valuable intelligence. This is borne out by the fact, at least based on the information provided to me by the government, that no interrogations of Mr. Jawad took place at or near the time that he was being tortured. Thus, the most likely scenario is that they simply decided to torture Mr. Jawad for sport, to teach him a lesson, perhaps to make an example of him to others. Whatever the reason, it was a direct violation of Major General Hood's orders and a grave breach of the Geneva Convention and the Convention Against Torture. According to Major General Hood, the first he learned of this is when I informed him a couple of weeks ago. He was provided the detainee records, the motion that I wrote, and the spreadsheet that I prepared. What was his reaction? A resounding thud of indifference. In fact, it took an order from the commission to even get him to talk to me about it. Here was a major general in the Army who has just learned that a detainee was subjected to grave abuse on his watch in direct violation of his orders.